our second son was a NICU baby, and he passed away at 8 months of age. So during that 8 months, or 6 months, I kind of saw what nurses did. I saw the doctors asking for their input, and I'm a big guy. I played football. You know, people don't look at you 6'3" and be like, "Oh, caring and compassionate. That's probably you." So it wasn't until I saw what these nurses did for my son, I was like, you know, I think that's the path I want to take. So I talked to my wife and decided to switch careers and go into healthcare.
How has it been? Obviously, you got into this before you could have anticipated that a pandemic would be bearing down on this country. So how did it meet your expectations before this, and how has everything kind of shifted over the last few months?
You know, I honestly don't know what expectations I had going into it, but the pandemic definitely was an opportunity to kick the tires and light the fires and just jump straight into it. No one saw it coming. No one really knew what to expect. And now that we're here, it hopefully helps us prepare for the second, third, whatever waves might be coming after it, having seen it earlier this spring and peak later on.
Yeah, tell me a little bit about this spring. Just take me back, what your role was at the hospital. Are you a Presbyterian? You're at the main hospital?
I'm at the main one, Presbyterian, yep.
So tell me a little bit about what you saw in the beginning and how it impacted you.
Yeah, I still remember the first one. It was a patient that was getting tested. We hadn't gotten the results yet, but you know, it kind of fit the textbook of here's all the symptoms that we knew of at the time. And ironically, we treated this person as if they were going to be positive, and they weren't. So like, okay, we dodged that bullet. And then I came in 3 or 4 days later, and there were 6 positive cases. And it just kept snowballing and snowballing after that. And it's gone up and down since. But it has been tough. It's because it's different. All these patients are in isolation, which is something we don't have a whole lot of.
Yeah, I mean, so much of what you do as a nurse is very hands-on and intimate. So have you still been able to give the kinds of care that you hope? And I mean, how challenging is it when you're dealing with patients who are intubated, who are having trouble breathing, who are scared, not able to see their families? Just talk about the role that you're now playing.
Yeah, we're kind of a liaison role to the families because unfortunately they're not there with their family members. And one thing that I learned early on was family members know how their family members act better than we ever will. So without them at the bedside, you really have to be much more careful with your assessment and look for subtle changes here and there, things that patient finds comfortable, things that patient doesn't find comfortable. So you got to rely on your teammates. What did they see? What little changes may have been going on for hours that we need to continue tracking and make sure it's not something more serious. But yeah, I wish the families were there. I wish, you know, they were more involved. It would be nice to not have the isolation so that these family members could be at the bedside with their loved ones. How
hard is it for you just as a human being too? I mean, I'm sure a lot of what you do is because you're empathetic.
Well, yeah, you have to be. You know, it's definitely been interesting in my house. My wife's a teacher, so our whole world got flipped upside down in the springtime, you know, teaching from home. And I only work weekends now because I'm homeschooling my kids 3 days a week. And it's a good thing I didn't go into education because that's, God bless them. But yeah, you have to be empathetic to the patients, you know, just go in every day and knowing that you're the only one there that's there for them. And so do everything you can as if that was your parent or your brother or sister or your loved one. But we have an awesome team. So that care doesn't drop off from days to nights, weekdays to weekends. There's always awesome people there to take care of their loved ones.
So what have the conversations been like at home? I was going to say, how concerned was your wife and your kids, but your wife's a teacher. So, I mean, I'm sure you were having some pretty tough conversations. I'm out every day. My husband's out every day. There's levels of exposure to this, but what are the conversations like at home?
Well, we had lots of conversations, little things. It was tough for my kids to understand. You know, they always come in and give me a big hug. Well, now it became a high foot until I've decontaminated. So they know just slow down. Dad's going to come play with them. But, you know, she was very nervous. Especially at the beginning, but I reassured her that we had all the PPE that we needed and I felt comfortable with it. it was also tough because there were people that didn't want their kids to be around my kids, just because they knew where I was and they were afraid that I was going to bring it home. So explaining that to a 10-year-old was challenging. Why they weren't going to school was tough, so it affected everyone in the whole community without a doubt.
So I want to talk for a moment about the hardest points, the lowest points. What have been the hardest things over the last few months, and how have you coped with it? How have you dealt with it?
Just having loved ones around you, and then teammates that are going through the same thing. Someone who's been there that can relate to it, they're going to be the best shoulder to talk on. And hopefully I've been an open ear to teammates that need to talk about it. But it's just, at first we didn't know if it was a sprint or a marathon, what the disease process was. And some of these patients, unfortunately, have been here a very long time, and just coming in with the same energy every day and trying to find one little way to improve their situation. You try to look for that, but knowing that it's the ICU, things are going to get better one day and drop down the next. And hopefully over the course of a month or 2 months or 3 months, it's better than it was before. That's just the goal, and you got to have that goal to reach every day when you go into work.
We hear often, I'm sure you do as well, it's a hoax, it's not that big of a deal. I'll get a little cough or maybe a fever and I'll be fine. It's nothing to take that seriously. It's being overblown. You are dealing with patients every day. So in your professional opinion and from what you have seen, what would your message be to people who are saying it's not that serious?
I've met a number of people that have had it and never required a hospitalization, and that may be their case in their sample set, but the sample set that I see are the sickest, and it is a horrible disease process. I would never wish it upon anyone. And I honestly wish we could get more cameras in to see people paralyzed, intubated, chest tubes, dialysis, all these measures that it takes to keep them alive. And yeah, that's a very small percentage of the positive COVID cases, but they are out there. And I wish that those pictures would be shown to people that believed it was a hoax.
Where do you find your bright spots? Is there anything, I think we're all kind of assessing life right now as the year comes to a close and we're trying to survive. Have you found any optimism or any bright spots that you can look forward to?
Definitely. I remember during the first shutdown, I was talking to some neighbors, and we happened to look up and we were like, man, the sky has never been this clear. That was one thing that really stuck out to us. And board games have been awesome. I've taken a lot of opportunity to bypass going out and meeting people for dinner and spending that time around the fire pit in the backyard or playing board games with my kids. They're more than a one-word answer now when I ask how was school. We've developed a little bit more communication there. So I think the biggest thing is just keeping it up within the family, having that time with them and not taking it for granted.